Hey, 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 I'm Michelle.
And I'm Greta.
We are girlfriends who have always been seekers. We love learning, sharing, and most of all, we love having those soul-to-soul moments with our girlfriends.
Our podcast is about spiritual connection and sisterhood. You are not alone. So grab your glass, get comfy, and join us as we make some noise, light up the room, and
Get into it. Hey everyone, I am so happy that I get to introduce a friend and neighbor of mine, Kate McKinnon. I'm going to let her tell her story and her journey and all of that, but she is a really amazing woman who has done so much, and I've personally had the benefit of receiving her work, and she's written books. She is doing work all over the world, really. She's worked with dolphins. I mean, just some really cool things. And so I want you, Kate, to really explain what it is that you do. Craniosacral is one of your big things. But if you can explain what that is, how you got into the work, and let's just have a conversation.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for having me here. I'm delighted to be doing this podcast with you both. So I began my career, my work life as a physical therapist in the UK, and came across something called craniosacral therapy early on. I specialized in working with children with disabilities, and it was something that a lot of the children were receiving. I was skeptical because I was in traditional medicine and didn't know what it was. But there was something that piqued my curiosity about it, and a very good friend of mine received some craniosacral therapy, and it made a big difference for her. It was really actually quite transformative. She needed a big dental procedure doing, which she was not looking forward to. And in her craniosacral session, what came up for her on the table was she had lost her mum a number of years before that, and really that grief was still very much locked down in her heart and it was taking a toll on her body. You know, we sort of wrap around and contain things that we don't have the capacity to deal with at the time often, and then we forget pretty much, and we adapt around it, but we're still putting energy into holding that in place. And this was an opportunity for her to start to feel into that grief and release it. And she didn't need this big procedure done. She needed some work done, but it wasn't as extensive as, was anticipated, because her body started to heal and had the resources to start to heal. We all have the capacity to heal. We produce so many chemicals, and, the whole idea of pharmacy is that it's copying what we already do in our body. So, how do we access that resource? And so she found a way to do that. So I am pretty intrigued by this point. Then I moved to emigrate to the US, to California, here in Livermore, and decide, whilst I'm jumping through a lot of hoops to get my physical therapy license here, to start my craniosacral therapy training and receive some work. So I also received it, which got me more deeply hooked into it, and began the training through the Ledger Institute. And it's kind of been one of those things where I follow my passion. Like, it lit me up. I wanted to know more. I did work as a pediatric physical therapist here in California, and at the same time was growing my craniosacral therapy skills, and set up my part-time practice along with having my PT work. Then I became pregnant with twins.
Oh, that'll keep you busy.
Yeah. Took a little break.
Yeah.
And when I returned to work, it was just my craniosacral therapy practice. After I think my children were around 4 or 5 years old when I got introduced to Wayne Dyer, and worked with him for the last 5.5 years of his life, which was kind of like a boot camp, really. Being around him so much, listening to him and learning his wisdom, the wisdom he had to share with all of us, as well as what he would call me his personal craniosacral therapist. He was very proud of that phrase.
Wow.
So it kind of has, following my passion, has taken me in all of these different directions I never anticipated. And because Wayne Dyer published with Hay House. I got to meet all the folks at Hay House and
wow, that's big.
Asked to write a book that he wrote the foreword to. So again, something I never sort of anticipated, but was given this opportunity to share what this work is. And like you were saying, not everybody's heard what craniosacral therapy is. I mean, I think is more commonly heard about. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years and more people are hearing about it. But still, you know, so this was an opportunity to, you know, contribute to the word getting out there and share what the possibilities are with this work. So I wrote a book.
Amazing. You know, I think when you first started speaking, you touched on something that a lot of people may not put two and two together when it comes to the body, your organs, actually holding onto emotion and suffering, sometimes really almost to a point of it could even be fatal. People hold so much grief in parts of their body. And I think we're just starting to, as a society, kind of realize how everything is so connected, so deeply connected. I mean, even when it comes to what nutrition you put in your body, how that affects everything. I think that's fascinating, just that piece right there, to touch upon that and start getting people to think about how their emotions are being stored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a wise thing our body does, because sometimes big events happen. They're too big to process. We don't have the capacity to process it there and then. It can be so overwhelming, so big, that wisely our body will wrap it up, squish it down, contain it. We don't want it running around our body, creating havoc. It is a mechanism that has some wisdom to it. And then we get that, you know, if we keep layering on more and more as we age and more events happen in our life, the body suddenly will go, you know what? I can't do this anymore. There's too many things that I'm holding in place. What can we let go of? So usually it will tell us, often in pain, you know, often we'll start, maybe we get unrelenting headaches, maybe we start getting back pain, whatever it is, right? Gut issues, digestion issues. So it will tell us, our body will tell us, you know, this is a way of listening. And then really what we're asking the body is, what can you let go of now? What can you do with all the wisdom you've gained? Right? You no longer need to use these old mechanisms. You're older, you're wiser, you've figured a lot of things out. So what would be an easier way?
Right. So it's sort of a primal safety response that we just naturally have. Probably kept us alive, you know, when we were running for our lives from some beast or something.
And it creates a new narrative of what's normal. And so having to undo so much of that, I feel like is such hard work, you know, because our body adapts, right? And goes, oh, well, this high stress that I'm dealing with all the time, and this, you know, my organs or my muscles feeling this way, that's just my normal way of being. When it's like, it's not, it doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
We can create a different story there, right? And we can change the vibrations and the energy that connect all of this for pathways of healing and ease in the body, right? Like not dis-ease. And so, yeah, it's a very powerful modality. So I actually had the opportunity to be trained in craniosacral when I was in massage school. And it was one of the modalities that I felt was the most impactful, because I witnessed with somebody on the table a full release. And just like you mentioned with this woman, what her connection was, there was a girl that I was working on, and she had gotten brutally beaten and raped. And so that surfaced, which can be scary. And I think there's a lot of people who do become afraid of the work because they're nervous about what might show up, right? And what I love about you as a practitioner is the safe environment and this sort of nurturing feeling that you give to your clients. And that's one reason why I was so excited to interview you specifically today, because I do think this type of work does require a certain kind of heart, and the practitioner really has to be well versed on, what do I do, you know, when somebody begins to release, right? Yeah, it is very powerful. And I think if those out there have not had an experience, and it doesn't always have to be so dramatic, right? I mean, it can be very small, it can be very relaxing. What I got out of it as a receiver was because I went for headaches at one point, and it was just so relaxing, and it wasn't so much manipulation of the body. So I also think for people who don't love full massages, this is yet another modality where you can still feel release in the body, still feel ease, but yet the body doesn't have to be so manipulated. So yeah, it's such a relaxing thing to experience.
And that's
for
important,
sure.
right? It's,
Yeah.
whenever we access relaxation, we know that we're getting a down regulation of our nervous system. Heard the fight flight, the sympathetic response in our body, and then we have the parasympathetic, the opposite, where we rest, digest, and can heal. So because we have the resources available for our body to now start repair. And if we're constantly in this sort of highly cortisol driven life, which
so many are
in,
Unfortunately.
we our access to that is restricted. So if there's any way of accessing and helping our nervous system downregulate and start to come into a state of relaxation, we have the potential to heal.
So for those that are out there who may have not even heard of this, or just maybe they heard but they don't really know what it is, can you even just give us a description of like what does a session kind of look like?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a little definition first. So craniosacral therapy, cranium is our head, obviously, and it's the skull. So that's the bony protection of our brain. So that's our central nervous system, and the rest of our central nervous system is down along the spine, the spinal cord, and then we have the vertebrae encasing that all the way down to the base where we have the sacrum. So that's that triangular shaped bone at the bottom. So we have a description there of what is, the encasement, the bony protection of our central nervous system. So craniosacral therapy, fundamentally is looking at how can we take the stresses, pulls that it can be on your big toe, and it's pulling up through the fascia through your central nervous system into your spinal cord, so up into your brain. So now we've got a compromise on our central nervous system. So how do we have the optimal functioning of our central nervous system? So that's kind of the inquiry in a way that through what we're doing with craniosacral therapy. And so we'll listen to the rhythm. The rhythm is created, so we have the central nervous system and it's bathed in a fluid, the cerebrospinal fluid, and that's constantly decreasing and increasing. The volume ever so slightly decreases and increases, and we can feel that rhythm is sort of sent out throughout the body.
Kind of sounds like ocean waves to me when you just explained it.
It feels
the way we like
that,
the ocean.
actually, in your
rolling
hands.
in and rolling
Yeah.
out. Yeah, it is. There's an assessment of that. So as a listening to it, how is it feeling? Is there a restriction somewhere that tells us the body's struggling, right, in that area? We listen to the fascia, so we'll pull on that, we'll give the fascia a tug, find out where there's a pull or restriction or restrictions in the body. And also we'll tune in energetically. So where is there energetic holding? That again sort of has that like a pebble in a pond, it radiates out and you can feel that. Often, so the place to begin is often where you've got all three going on often, right? There's a fascial pull, the cranial rhythm's restricted through there, and the energy is being held in there too. So then my hands settle in and go onto that area, and then my hands listen and wait, because I'm following the inner wisdom of each person, because we all have the solution, right? To
that intuitive
it's
wisdom.
Intuitive. It's expressed through the movement of the tissue. So there's not necessarily words spoken. Sometimes there are, but sometimes my hands settle in and I wait and follow what the tissue does. How does the tissue want to resolve? Like, how does that hip want to resolve the problem? And as much as, I'm a trained physical therapist, I kind of know a little bit about the body, and I'm like, oh, it's solving it this way. I would have never have thought it like that, right?
That's fascinating.
But the body knows.
Yeah.
So I am listening and following the wisdom of the body. So it's based on the premise that we have this inner wisdom, this knowing of how to solve the problem. And there may be additional resources that are needed. So it's not the be and end all to all of things, but that's the philosophy, that's the approach. And then spontaneously, some memory may surface, like you shared, Michelle. It could have been a car accident. It could have been something, they twisted their ankle as they were coming out of the divorce courts, or, it's like it can be so many different story, right? There's a story there that sometimes needs to be told, or maybe it's been told before and it's just acknowledged. yeah, that happened, and here we go.
Just because of where you're touching and these memories will just surface.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think it's so fascinating. We've all heard of talk therapy. I think there's a point, though, where you can only go so far. And you get too cerebral with that. And you kind of just know what to say to like answer the question, move on. And it's like you're going to a deeper place.
Yeah. And oftentimes people have done a lot of their counseling, which is super important. Like if somebody has been through a big trauma, oftentimes we'll work in conjunction. So if something gets opened up on my table for the first time for somebody, it's a good idea they go and get their therapy conjunction with the work with.
Oh, I like that. So you can use them hand in hand.
Yes. Yeah. So
I'm a big believer of multiple modalities at one time, because I do think that we are tapping into different parts of who we are. In a sense, it expedites, the healing process.
Yeah. And it can go places that you couldn't in
Right.
but you need to explore all avenues, right? If you're really trying
and
to
there
heal.
are oftentimes people who've done a ton of their own personal work. They've done a lot of talk therapy, and that somatic piece, the piece that was in the body, hasn't let go until it gets acknowledged. And then
Right. It's almost like it doesn't feel safe yet.
or I think sometimes we forget.
Oh.
Like we just hold on to it and we just forgot.
Yeah.
It's like
Just kind of stored it and let it go.
And I've walked away. And it's not updated itself. And sometimes I will say, I'll invite that area to say, are you aware of how everywhere else is doing in the body and how much has changed since you created this holding? I say, okay, yeah, I'd rather be like this relaxed area over here. And it will, that area will let go.
And that goes back to that whole idea of it creates this new normal of what the body thinks is what it's supposed to be doing, right? This sounds kind of funny, but I was just in my mind, I was thinking like when somebody has a bunion on their foot and it's this sort of calcium buildup because the foot is feeling unbalanced. So now it's creating something to try to get into that sort of balanced state. And I think that happens sometimes in the rest of our body where it will do the same thing, but until we can communicate to it and let it know that it's okay. That example you gave where like this part of the body is feeling really relaxed. How about we get you over here? But that wasn't safe to that part of the body, right? Until it really gets
and it may need some commitment on our part.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you committed to taking care of yourself now?
Right.
Like, or are you going to go back to those old days?
Well, that's a good question right there. How many of us are really committed? We talk a good talk sometimes. Yeah.
Or in the moment, it all sounds fantastic, and then you walk out the door.
I'm not going to drink alcohol. I'm going to go to bed early, wake up early. Yeah. Lasts for about a couple weeks. And then
Yes. Wow. So your book, what is it? Tell us a little bit about what your books are about, because I love how you described what craniosacral is. We got the visual of, so somebody's laying on a massage table, your hands are holding in spaces, receiving messages, you're doing your work. Does your book describe all of this too, or tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so stories are the best way, right? Case examples that engage us. So the beginning of the book sort of follows, I share a bit of my experience of it, and then we follow somebody who I worked with over a number of years and what happened to him. He came initially to me in a lot of back pain, and it was limiting his golf game. So there was his motivation.
Yeah. My husband's talking about that right now. It's like, I got to get the back working because golf.
Right?
Yes.
So sometimes it takes that, what's in it for me? What am I going to gain by?
It's going to motivate you.
Yes, exactly. And so there's a lot of case studies. Also, I explain about craniosacral therapy kind of from my journey, from the classes I took, what did I learn? And then at the end, some ways in which we can do it to ourselves, like how can we use our hands on ourselves, and what are some of the ways that can enhance a treatment? So what can I do afterwards?
I love that. You can actually treat yourself. Like that, I think is great information for people that maybe wouldn't take that extra step to go see someone. You can do little things to help heal you along the way. That's great.
And it almost what I've seen over the years, it almost happens automatically that people start just putting their hands on themselves when they've got a bit of stomach ache. Oh, I'll just pretend like they're Kate's hands, or, whoever they're seeing. And they'll say, yeah, I could feel things change. And,
Wow.
My hands just started to move, and I could feel heat releasing and changes happening. And they'll treat their pets and their loved ones. Maybe a child has a headache, or so. There's ways in which our hands have been used for healing since we existed.
We are energetic beings. Yes, we forget that.
Yeah.
We've been trained. We were taught out of it, I think. We forgot how powerful we are.
Yeah.
What you're talking about reminds me a lot of the different, I had it earlier, your different chakras. Thank you. Yeah.
It's like charades now.
Yeah, because it makes me think of energy, the energy flowing through you, and especially when you talk from cranium to sacral.
Exactly. And we do include Dr. John Upledger, who developed craniosacral therapy from, osteopathy was always taught to the doctors to, if you had an MD license or a DO license or a dentist, you could do cranial osteopathy, which is how he learned it. He felt that it was so important that it was extended out from that sort of narrow group of professionals, that he taught it to healthcare providers. He was actually working with children with autism and found, it was so helpful. We needed more hands. We needed more people to use their hands. So he that was his motivation to take it wider, to a wider group of people that could train, anybody who has a hands-on license, essentially. So massage therapists, physical therapists like myself. He knew that, there's a way of teaching it that could, and he was a very curious man, so he included chakras in the training. He was a very skilled acupuncturist, so he knew a lot about the meridians, and so he includes a little bit of that. So there's a way of using that information and quickly doing it with our hands. It's sort of a very simplified version, but there's an awareness that there are all these systems and we can use all of it.
I think also as we are able to do it on ourselves, it builds on this idea that when you do it, a client comes to you, they receive it from you, and then you take that home. And as we talk about sort of this muscle memory in our bodies and how, we're storing maybe past traumas or events or things that have happened, it's the same thing as we try to undo it. So as you sort of set, I guess, the foundation of it all, and then someone can take it home, do it on themselves. And each time the body receives that more and more, it starts to change the story, as you kind of said before.
Yeah.
And all that vibration, all that energy that gets built and transferred, and all the things that we can create. I think we forget that we are creators naturally. And so with the intention that we put on anything, we do have the ability. We have so much power within ourselves that until we really sit down and have these kinds of discussions, we forget. Like, we're walking out in the world as like these superheroes, really.
Yeah. But we've lost our way. We think we're just these meat suits walking around, and we're supposed to just carry everything on our shoulders. And we're blocking. When you were talking, it reminded me of like an electrical cord that is just like kinked. We're that's what we are. We're these kinked electrical cords. We need that flow.
So much energy in us.
Yeah, we need
Wanting
it to
get
flow
out.
again.
Yeah, totally. So I would love to kind of segue into the dolphins, because I think as we talk about energy and all of that and beyond these meat suits, right?
Yeah.
Beyond the spiritual beings.
Yeah, I hate that word,
I know,
but it is so appropriate, because I think we just, that's the complete loss of these magical, spiritual, energetic beings.
We're so focused on physical. I think everything has to be, this physical part of who we are. But there's this whole other side of the larger side of who we are.
And animals don't forget.
Animals.
They don't forget. They know exactly what they are and what they're working with, and they're connected.
Tell us about that.
Yeah.
So that was a program that was set up by Dr. John also, Dr. John Upledger. He became really curious about what it would be like to include dolphins in a craniosacral therapy treatment, and started experimenting in the way that he just was such a curious guy that he tried it out. And he found that the dolphins really facilitated the changes in people while they were in the water.
So yeah, how would you even do that? Is the client like in a floaty type of situation? You know,
Yeah, so they were floated. So now that program has been developed into, every summer in the Grand Bahamas, there's a usually 3 treatment programs that are 4 days long that clients can come to and receive treatment for those 4 days. Each day there'll be a part of the day where they're floated in the dolphinarium, it's salt water, that it's sort of part in a bay area. There's a platform that as therapists we stand on and just support the heels or the head, depending how the client wants to float. And they're just floated out all next to each other and kind of in a row. And the dolphins are free to come and go. They're not sort of confined in this tiny area. So they're there. And I've watched them each time pretty much. They'll go down under the water and usually just swim underneath everyone. Oh. It's as if they're scanning in, just like, okay, what's going on? Let me see what this whole group's bringing today. And then they will do different things. Each time is different. But when you're lying, I've also done training and received treatment in this form. And so you're lying down and you can hear all the clicks and squeaks and the communication between the dolphins. Sometimes they'll come up and maybe they'll be next to you. Maybe they'll bring their rostrum up to touch different parts of your body. They seem to move the water in a specific way. So, they are masters of fluid and water.
Yes, I've seen them do some crazy things in water. Yeah. Spirals and...
Yeah, so they will, and then the body is just undulating. So there's that's also helping the treatment. And they may be, maybe they slide off to the right and they touch the person next to them, and that, so you're really we could say we're really in nature, right? And we think of the bigger environment. So now we're extending our awareness out. We've got the dolphins, but we have little shrimp that you can hear scratching away. We've got the little fish coming by. There's seagulls out there. The weather is changing. The sun's going in. It's going out. It might be raining. There's just this whole big creation. It's like a massive treatment room, right? The treatment room is now outside in nature. And so much is going on that is influencing. And you have this group environment. So, and this interaction between people that's also facilitating a change.
That's beautiful. It just reminds me how we are all connected. And as you were saying, it even made me have this image of what's going on inside of our body, mirroring what you were just describing on the outside. Yeah. And it almost brought tears to my eyes. It's just beautiful. Beautiful. And I feel so calm even just having that picture that you just so eloquently explained. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, so it's hard to sort of prove anything about the dolphins, but for sure everybody who's experienced it will feel changes and changed by that experience. And I certainly do too. And when I come back and I'm in my treatment room, oftentimes the dolphins just show up to me. They appear. And sometimes specific ones, because you kind of get to know the characters and the names of the different dolphins. And so, they will often show up.
How rewarding. And they definitely sense energy. They have a sense that we don't have or we need to get reacquainted with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we know that from any animal, right? We know that from the pets in our house.
Oh, yeah. My dog. Yes.
Yeah. And they love craniosacral therapy.
Craniosacral therapy. So animals can receive it too.
I learn a lot from my dog, just how she wakes up in the morning, the things she does, laying down scratching when she's happy, doing her down dog in the morning, first thing. She doesn't think about it. She just does it. She's just like, this is what's going to make me feel good. This is what my body needs. There's no, I don't have time. I got to do the laundry and do this before I leave. And I don't have time for yoga now.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
They're amazing. They're great teachers.
Yeah. They absolutely are. But I love that they can receive the work too. I mean, that's really cool to think about as well, is how animals are so receptive to all of this.
I do think it's a going back to things that we knew before. I think a lot of these different modalities they may sound so unique and foreign and, I never heard of this, but I really do think we're just going back to what our ancestors naturally did. Just how the dog naturally gets up and does down dog. I think we used to understand these things and we're now having to learn again.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, they say even with babies, I know from different yoga trainings I've gone to, there's a primordial sound, which is Om, and it like really encompasses all sounds and everything. And so when babies are born, they come out so whole, but as they get conditioned, right, we start to forget, like you said, the body, it has the capacity, the wisdom to heal itself, but we forget along the way because we're just so distracted, and other things have come in as, priorities, and it's just hard sometimes. But to take the time, and I think for me, I know I've always loved the spa. I've always loved, anything that has to do with self-care. I was just really into it as a child even. So it's no wonder I'm in the work that I'm also in. But what I love about sharing this work with others is that a lot of people just don't know. They haven't been introduced to these modalities. And so again, to know all of them are intertwined, and
That's
all
me.
of them
I'm one of them. Like I
Yeah.
would totally be the person that'd be like, I don't need a massage. I'm fine. I feel great. And then you get the massage, and afterwards you're like, oh, I didn't know.
That's what I needed.
I didn't know like all of those different muscles
Right.
hurt and were tight. And yeah, we get so disconnected and
we just get so used to how
yeah.
we carry ourselves in the world. And so,
This feels normal. This is natural.
This is just until you have an experience where you don't feel that, or you get some little bit of relief. And it's like, whoa, I did not know that was possible.
Yeah. Well, I'm so curious. I want to make an appointment with you because I want to know what I'm holding, and I want to get it to flow through me and out. Let's move it up and out, because I think everybody has something. And
We all do.
yeah.
We all do. We all live life, right? And our inquiry is, how can it be even better? Right? And also preventative. Oftentimes people come to me for a particular issue they're wanting to address, and then they end up seeing me on a regular basis because we can start to take care of things as they start to emerge. The quieter whispers that we've gotten used to ignoring. And when we're doing this work, we listen. It's louder. We hear it. And so then we can take care of things before they become symptomatic, or before we need to go and see the doctor.
Yes. I know when you were talking about cortisol, I think that's the word we're hearing a lot lately, because it is a big issue, especially with women. Like we take on so much. It's unnatural, the amount of, raising the children, working a full-time job, keeping the house clean, making sure dinner's on the table. It's just a lot. And I know my kids, like I think, oh, I'm fine. I'm really calm. I got it together. My kids, my daughter who's 20, came back from college, was staying with us over the summer. And she was like, Mom, like you're so on edge. You just freak out about every little thing. Like take a breath. And I'm thinking like, oh, wow, she's my mirror. She's telling me, she's showing me what I need to work on. And that actually my cortisol levels are probably through the roof. And here I think that's just my normal existence. Yeah, we need assistance. We need help working through this very demanding life.
Well, and I think, as humans, we were never meant to
Do all of
figure out
this.
it alone.
No.
Amen. We're social. Right?
Yes.
We need connection. We thrive on connection. And we are our best, and we're the most creative when we're in connection, communication with one another. And so, we have in America, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you're the lone pioneer kind of mentality. In the UK, it's the stiff upper lip, same things, right? Same messaging, that you should be able to solve this yourself. We're just not hardwired for that. We were never meant to do that. So sometimes people deny themselves help because I should be able to do it by myself.
And if I don't, I look weak. And what will people think? And what do I think about my own self, and the self-judgment and all those things that end up storing in our bodies? Yes. It's so sad that we have moved into that space where everything is so independent. And I think also like after COVID, as people have been able to work from home and get so comfortable in their own places alone, we've just continued to detach more and more from the tribes and the community of people. And there has been such a strong, I think, energy right now around the desire to want that again. And so I love that even with that dolphin, therapy, that it can be done communally. You've got multiple dolphins, you got multiple people that are tapping into all of this. And so the shifts can be so much greater when we pull our resources and help each other out. So it's so amazing. I mean, the work that you're doing is really awesome. And I love that you also share it with others. I've taken a class from you as to how to bring the work home. And I really believe, anytime, like myself being a therapist in the room with clients on the table, anytime my hands touch someone, I feel it's pulling from all the work, all the training, all the people, all the Kate McKinnons in the world, like all the people that I've come before, my teachers. It's all coming through in each session. And so it's really powerful to be part of those groups where you can learn from each other and pass on these things. It's not like just that one guy has the knowledge and the power. It's we all do. The more we share the stories and the more we share the modalities and all of that, we do have so much power to ripple the changes, the waves. If we want to go back to this ocean concept, one little change in how it just keeps moving in a vast body of water, right? We
don't have to be sick. Yes, that's beautiful. We don't have to be sick. We can heal. We can heal each other. We can heal ourselves. I appreciate and love that you're bringing that back to us.
Yeah. And I think our presence, what we hold for one another is really important. A big part of my work is, learning to be the craniosacral skill. And also I've done an additional training in how do I hold my therapeutic presence? What do I bring? You said that, Michelle, like what are we bringing to the table when we show up for one another? Are we able to hold that grounded space for somebody to share unconditionally, without giving all the advice that we love to give? And that's something that I do once a month is a free call where we just gather and I guide us through a grounding meditation and there's a sharing. At the moment we're doing a phrase, like a saying that we hear, and each person shares what it evokes for them. We go into a ground and fill, we go into a sort of more meditative internal space, and I share the words again. So there's that group sharing, like what's the group wisdom bringing? And it's amazing, it just, every time it works. It's very simple, but there's no preparation, and it works. Each person is a little pebble, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And then that can trigger something and heal something you might say that seems insignificant or feels like it's just about you can help the other people there. It's beautiful. It's really what was intended.
So I want to go back to something, because how did you get connected to Dr. Wayne Dyer? How did that even happen?
Well, I think that's one of those things, isn't it, where you follow your bliss and something happens. Somebody that I knew from swimming, she was a patient of a nurse practitioner locally, and she introduced me. I got to know her, and she, the nurse practitioner, had met Wayne Dyer. She'd gone to the island, to Maui, to meet him, and happened to be on the day he was diagnosed with his leukemia. So he started working with her, and then I got introduced to him through that connection.
Wow.
Amazing.
Wow.
But that's the way the universe works when you follow your passion. I love that you said that, because we've had many women on the podcast that really have followed their passion. That's where it started. Something sparked their interest and they just were brave enough to go there. And I mean, I think for all of our listeners, if you can just take that little piece with you, if something's sparking your interest, if there's like a little fire that happens inside of you, keep doing it. You deserve that. You are worthy of following that passion. I think so many people just don't, because they think, well, I don't have time for that, or I'm already doing this.
And it doesn't need, I mean, the story sounds big, and it doesn't need to look like that. I mean, yes, it sounds wonderful. And also it's a big ask. It was a lot of growth for me. I had two little ones at home.
Yeah.
I mean, there was that's why I say it was like boot camp. So, I think there's a contentment in whatever it is, and it can be a lot simpler, a lot less dramatic sounding, and very fulfilling,
Yeah, it can just be one step at a time.
Absolutely. And we all have gifts to share. And I think that's the other piece, get caught up in the day-to-day. Maybe you are somebody who is a nurse or a secretary or whatever it is that your work is. And then you come home and it's kids, and maybe you have a spouse or a partner or not, maybe you have a dog, right? Like whatever your life is, but we just get so caught up in the day-to-day kind of not small things that we're doing. I'm not minimizing the work that everyone's doing, but I'm saying like it becomes routine. Yeah. And then we just get kind of stuck in that space. To have a little bit of awareness of something that does spark you and think, you might have this big gift that you aren't even aware of, right? And so to take those little opportunities just to explore, like you were saying with Upledger, you know, like he was a curious man, and that just that curiosity throws you into, you know, so many cool adventures that the mind may not have even thought of, but the curiosity, asking the questions, just opens up this whole world. And I think that's so cool. You know, so the listeners don't know this. We got it on video, but we had Kate open up our really cool book, our ceremony book. And it's funny now because I wish we had the page open. Yeah. I would have loved to have read what it said.
It's okay. We'll put it in the video. We have it.
Yeah. We'll throw it. We'll show a clip of it in the video, but it's funny because it really is so relevant to this entire conversation from when we started, you know, to where we're going now in so many ways.
A lot of times it's even more relevant than we realize when it's first read in the beginning, once we weave our way through the podcast episode. Yeah.
So it's really cool just to sit down, talk in a way that is just free flowing like the ocean, right?
Yes.
The ocean concept keeps coming up to really just, discuss all these things because, you know, taking the time to do that is already such a big deal in a lot of our lives. Like we think about, we don't have that time. But when we can settle down, get quiet, get curious, there is just so much to explore and learn and heal from, which is amazing. I love it. Any final thoughts that you have for anybody who's, you know, curious? Any of our listeners or watchers who are curious?
I would say, you know, I mean, for me, it's always been there's a continual learning. I still continue to take classes through the Upledger Institute. You know, I've done a lot of training on my presence, and I'm just about to wrap up another certification.
Good for you.
Nice.
On something called havening, which is a way we use touch, but also to work through things that get locked in our systems, charges, activation, and it's something we can do ourselves as well. So that's kind of my big passion, really, is how do we use our hands to unlock ourselves, to release ourselves, and the you know, as many tools as we can have that we can also do ourselves is a big one for me, and you know, for our children, because children could do it too. So it's kind of using our own biology to help ourselves.
Yeah, children probably pick it up even faster than we do because they don't have all the blocks and conditioning that we've built up. Yep. Yeah. I really had no idea what this conversation was going to look like. This is a foreign concept to me. I'm really fascinated by it and so intrigued by this work that you do. And I swear I am going to make an appointment with you.
Good.
Because I think this is what I need right now. So I love that about this podcast. I love that we get to meet these fascinating women that are doing important work, and then we get to benefit from it too.
I know. It's all like the gift keeps giving, right?
It
all
does.
The way around. It's so funny because I love when we get our guests in, and sometimes we don't. Greta may not know anything about you. I do, or she might bring someone in that it's like, oh, I don't really know much about them. And so it makes it really fun and spontaneous. And so I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but yeah, sometimes we just sit down, like we haven't even maybe met the person before, and we just start having a conversation. And this, I think, is the beauty of you coming in, us being able to have a space to do this type of work also, to bring people in and talk about what their gifts are. And it's just really fun. So I'm glad you got to, I can't wait for you to have that experience and then come back and share it with everyone.
Yes, I can't wait to talk about it on the podcast. So
fun.
Wonderful to meet you, Kate. You really are. We'll say it again, you're doing important work. You know, you said you've been doing it for 20 years. Like there's people like me that didn't know about it. I just think it's great that our listeners are now informed that you're doing this work out there and healing people. What an amazing place that we can get to if we can take care of our bodies and heal ourselves and honor our bodies and be in a state of peace. What we are able to give to our families is so much more, our work. It expands out like that. You know, throwing a stone in the water, that ripple effect. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Greta.
Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you liked what you heard and we're your girls,
please share and add a review on iTunes so we can continue to grow our circle. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at That's My Girl Podcast.